Starmer thought he was stepping into a day of sunshine and celebration at Doncaster races, but what unfolded was a public humiliation he never saw coming. As the Labour leader made his way through the excited crowd, cheers turned to jeers, and the air filled with chants and insults aimed directly at him. The tension was thick as security tried to shield him, but the anger in the crowd was undeniable. How did a day at the races turn into such a harsh reminder of growing public resentment?
To address the drivers of migration at source and to tackle the gangs. And as a result, irregular arrivals to Italy by sea are down 60%.
As Keir Starmer made his way through the crowd at the Doncaster races, it became clear that not everyone was there just for the horses. Captured on video, the mood quickly shifted from festive to hostile. Starmer, walking alongside his wife Victoria and surrounded by security, found himself at the centre of a tense scene. Instead of cheers or even polite indifference, a group of racegoers began chanting insults at him, making their discontent very clear. The footage shows Starmer visibly tense as the crowd turned on him. The most prominent chant was Dana, twisted from his name, showing just how little respect some of the crowd had for the Labour leader. But it didn't stop there. One of the racegoers hurled a particularly sharp insult about Labour's recent and controversial cuts to the winter fuel allowance, a move that hit many pensioners hard. The cut, which affected millions of older citizens, seemed to strike a nerve with the crowd. The anger over this policy was reflected in their heckling, with some shouting that Labour had turned its back on the elderly.
So I'm pleased that we're deepening our cooperation here, led on the UK side by our new border security commander who has been with me today here in Italy at the coordination centre this morning to share intelligence, share tactics.
As Starmer and his wife tried to navigate their way to the grandstand, the tension only escalated. What might have started as a few scattered insults quickly snowballed into something more. Boos began to ripple through the crowd, growing louder as Starmer's group continued to move. The clip captures the discomfort on his face, the kind of moment no politician enjoys, public embarrassment on such a large scale. When Keir Starmer arrived at the Doncaster races, it became clear that he wasn't going to enjoy a warm reception. What began as a festive occasion quickly soured as the British public made their dissatisfaction with him known in no uncertain terms. Starmer, accompanied by his wife Victoria and surrounded by security, was met with open hostility as they made their way to the grandstand, a moment captured on camera for the world to see. The footage shows a group of racegoers targeting Starmer with a barrage of insults and taunts, their discontent boiling over. The most notable chant was Dana, deliberately pronounced with a W to mock him. It was a crude but effective way to highlight the contempt some people feel toward the Labour leader. The crowd wasn't just heckling for sport, they had specific grievances in mind. One person hurled a particularly biting insult about pensioners, referencing the Labour Party's controversial decision to cut winter fuel allowances. This policy has sparked outrage, especially among elderly citizens who rely on that support to get through the colder months. Starmer, seen as the face of that decision, became a convenient target for this anger.
He didn't properly commit to that scheme, didn't he? Insisting, of course, that it's not really properly started even here in Italy, so to judge the success is a little too premature. I thought what was interesting also was this use of the word British pragmatism.
As he and his wife ascended the stairs, the tension thickened. The chants grew louder, and a chorus of boos echoed through the air, coming from multiple directions. The security detail surrounding them did little to cushion the blows of public disapproval. It was impossible to ignore the resentment, and the mood among the crowd was clear. Many felt Starmer had failed them. The anger directed at Starmer during the Doncaster races is a reflection of a much deeper frustration brewing among the British public, particularly over Labour's recent policy decisions. One of the biggest points of contention has been the cuts to the winter fuel allowance, a move that has affected millions of pensioners across the country. For many elderly people, this allowance is crucial, especially during the cold winter months when energy bills skyrocket. The decision to cut this support has left many vulnerable citizens struggling to afford basic heating, a reality that hit hard with those in attendance at the races. The winter fuel allowance, once a reliable source of financial relief for older households, has now been means-tested, meaning only the poorest pensioners qualify. However, the problem is that many who don't fall under that specific threshold are still in need of help. The move has been widely criticised, with charities like Age UK raising alarms about how this change will leave 2.5 million elderly people without the support they need. The impact has been particularly harsh on pensioners with fixed incomes, many of whom are already living on the edge of poverty. For them, the loss of this allowance isn't just inconvenient, it's devastating.
Viewed across Europe as a pretty right-wing leader, and he's saying that he's willing to do it because it's kind of the most pragmatic thing to do, that if a course of action seems to work.
As the frustration with Keir Starmer and the Labour Party continues to grow, there's a sense that the party, once seen as the champion of the working class and vulnerable groups, has lost its way. Many feel that Starmer's policies have become increasingly disconnected from the struggles of everyday people. Issues like housing affordability, rising living costs, and skyrocketing energy bills remain largely unaddressed, leaving ordinary citizens feeling overlooked. The public's discontent with Starmer and Labour has been simmering for some time, but recent policy decisions have caused that anger to boil over. One of the most contentious issues has been Labour's controversial cuts to the winter fuel allowance, a move that has disproportionately affected pensioners and vulnerable groups. For many older citizens, the allowance was a lifeline during the colder months, helping them manage surging energy bills. The decision to reduce or remove this support for millions has been viewed as a betrayal, particularly by a party that once prided itself on standing up for the most vulnerable. Labour's shift to means testing the winter fuel allowance has left countless pensioners in limbo. Previously, the allowance was a blanket provision available to all older adults, ensuring they could afford heating during the winter. Under Labour's new policy, however, only the poorest pensioners now qualify, leaving those on modest, fixed incomes who don't meet the means-tested criteria struggling. Many of these individuals still face rising energy costs but have lost this critical support, creating a devastating situation for those already living on the edge of poverty. Charities like Age UK have been vocal in their criticism, warning that over 2.5 million elderly people on low incomes will be affected by these changes. This figure, higher than initially estimated, highlights the significant portion of the population overlooked by the government's decision. Pensioners who have worked hard their entire lives and are living on tight budgets are now forced to choose between keeping their homes warm and affording other basic necessities. The public's backlash against this policy was on full display at the Doncaster races, where racegoers didn't hold back their feelings about Starmer's leadership. Insults about the winter fuel allowance cuts were hurled at him as he tried to make his way through the crowd, showing just how raw and real the anger is. The chants and boos weren't just spontaneous outbursts, they were the manifestation of widespread dissatisfaction with how Labour has handled key issues that affect millions of lives. However, the winter fuel allowance isn't the only policy drawing criticism. There's a broader sense that Labour, under Starmer's leadership, has drifted away from its core mission of protecting the working class and those most in need. Many feel the party has shifted too far toward the political centre, attempting to appeal to more affluent voters while neglecting its traditional base. Policies impacting housing affordability, rising living costs, and access to social services have all contributed to the perception that Labour is out of touch with the struggles of ordinary people. Public anger has been further fueled by the belief that Starmer has been hesitant or slow to take strong stances on pressing issues. From energy prices to housing and even healthcare, many argue that Labour's policies under his leadership lack the boldness needed to address the country's growing challenges. Do you think Labour's recent policy decisions, like the winter fuel allowance cuts, reflect a shift away from its traditional role as the champion of working class and vulnerable communities? What changes would you like to see from Keir Starmer and the Labour Party to better address the struggles faced by ordinary citizens? Let us know your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates and analysis on Britain's political news.